Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It's Thursday, May 23rd, 2024. Time to fly a different kind of insurrectionist flag in front of another Alito home. Yes, we're back with that story again. I don't know. Time warps in these weird ways in between shows when I'm not actually, speaking to you. News happens, and we discuss it on social media, and then I get back the next morning, and I'm like, that's old news, right? Yeah, but we haven't had a chance to discuss it yet. So, Alito and his upside-down flag now displaced from the headlines by Alito and his Pine Sol air freshener flag, which I wasn't aware that it was. I don't know that I was specifically aware that it was being used as an insurrectionist symbol in the same way that the inverted American flag is being used that way. Although it gets used for everything, and people do it all the time. It's usually not by Supreme Court justices. And, yeah, typically speaking, people who are sitting on the Supreme Court making these decisions for us are pretty well aware, for instance, that, the stability of the country, as long as they're sitting on the court, usually you would think that they would think it's a pretty stable country. But at any rate, apparently flying the old archaic, Revolutionary War era flag, before we had settled on what would our flag be, the old appeal to heaven, a flag that, I don't know, what do they, I know they call the don't tread on me one, it's the Gadsden flag, but that wasn't the one that was in use here. Although that, by the way, is used all the time by insurrectionists as well, although it's just also used by people who are cantankerous, jackasses as well. We have a Gadsden flag license plate available here in Virginia, and it is typically on the cars of Tea Party and MAGA cranks, but occasionally libertarians as well, libertarians who haven't gone over to being MAGA or QAnon or Tea Party cranks. They are few and far between, but they do exist. Anyway, that wasn't the one. I don't know, what do they call the pine tree flag? I don't know. We'll probably talk with Greg a little bit about it. They have a name for it, I'm sure, somewhere. And it's like archaic. It's kind of got some historical interest. But anyway, that's the story. Alito, two stories in this. Alito was flying it at his other home, which is in Long Beach Island, I think, in New Jersey. He's originally from New Jersey, so he keeps a vacation home there on Long Beach Island. And because it's a beachfront home, people fancy themselves seafarers, and he was displaying it on one of those, what I'm sure there's a name for this too, but those three flag, basically cross flag poles, essentially. One flag up at the top and one on each of the arms, and they probably have a name, and I'm not a seafarer, and I don't know. So I'll ask some old salt whether he knows the name of it, and we'll see if we can figure it out. Anyway, so he had the three flags flying. One was this old pine tree flag, which, honestly, that's his new excuses. I thought it was an air freshener. And secondly, up there was also, there was a Long Beach Island flag, which I didn't even realize that they had such a flag, but apparently they do, or at least the caption in the newspaper photo that I saw of it identified it as such. The other was, I think, a 2022 Philadelphia Phillies flag, which, again, I didn't recognize, but the caption in the newspaper identified it as such. Probably, it did say 2022, and that wasn't a Trump election year, and I don't think they had their own midterm elections flag. So, not sure what it was. I don't know if this is as flagrant a violation, but of course, it now raises questions about, well, who's making decisions about flying flags if it's not you, and you want to stop blaming your wife for all of these things. And there are, of course, 5 different attempts to explain why it all matters, some of which we will actually share here, and some of which actually take new and interesting angles on this stuff. And why not? We'll share a lot of those things. Other things happening today, not trial in New York City. I think they're on a break today, though I'm sure there's probably some motion business to take care of. But I believe the jury gets the extended holiday break now, and the action, such as it is in the courtrooms for the former guy, moves down to Florida, where they are fighting bitterly over the espionage case. I mean, that's what it is. It's an Espionage Act violation being investigated. You know, the Mar-a-Lago documents case. There were some fireworks in the courtroom yesterday, even though the defendant wasn't in the courtroom and there was no jury. This is all pre-trial stuff. And Eileen Cannon sits there and I guess daydreams her way through most of it and thinks of ways to not preside over the trial so that it doesn't happen. All right, Greg Dworkin is here. Let's start rounding up stories. Discussing items of the day, archaic flags that people might find and fly on their flagpoles. Not too many other interesting colonial era ones to use, except for, I think the Green Mountain Boys had their own flag. I think I saw that once. Never seen that one for sale, though. Good morning, Greg. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
You're welcome. And have you seen the flags?
Yeah.
Okay. They're not that important.
It's often called the Appeal to Heaven flag. That's a name for it in the last 10 years or so.
All right.
But it was originally called the Pine Tree flag and goes back to George Washington's era because it was suggested as a flag that maybe he should fly on his naval ships.
Ah, okay.
So it's historic, and mostly it was a historical relic until it was adopted by white Christian nationalists.
Oh, why?
So here's the funny thing.
Part? Okay.
I mean, Mike Johnson flies it in front of his office.
All right. I figured it might become popular because it said heaven on it, and they love heaven. But
it basically means a theological,
okay.
America's a white Christian nation and should be run as such kind of flag.
I found it interesting.
And to me, as a non-lawyer,
a justice, yes,
I don't think it's fair to brand Alito as flying two January 6 flags. I think he flew one January 6 flag, which is the upside down one.
Yeah.
And a second one extolling a white Christian nation. Now, I think that means that he should recuse himself, again, as a non-lawyer, from
why not?
January 6 cases because of the upside down flag. And I think that he should recuse himself on contraception and a whole bunch of other stuff based on this flag. That's what should happen, but that's what won't happen. And Armando had an interesting thread about this, because all of Armando's threads are interesting, even when he's wrong. He's not wrong about this one, though. He has, the idea here that it's very difficult to argue that Alito should recuse because most of the recusal case law and precedent is about recusing yourself on the one hand when it's been judicial misconduct, not extrajudicial misconduct.
Oh, all right.
And secondly, on the other hand, you have to step back and say, well, who's affected by the case? Alito's going to vote for Trump, Armando argues. No. So, January 6th got nothing. It's not going to change his mind in any way, shape, or form. He was already there.
Okay, I see what he means.
What about other cases? Well, he's already there. What do you do with that? When do you draw the line and say, okay, that's something you should get kicked off for? That's not trying to make excuses for him. It's just, stepping back and looking at what the reality is. And interestingly, Armando makes a kind of a subtext argument in that thread.
All right.
Where you read it and you get the impression that Alito is sort of vindictive.
Yes, okay.
And so what do you do with that? In other words, if you go ahead and try to push him off and he stays, it's one of those, if you, shoot at the king, you best not miss kind of stuff. And does that prejudice him in his vindictive persona to every other case you have in front of him where there might be a case where you actually might want his vote on something? And so I'm not saying that there is such a thing because I don't think he would vote on any of the cases my way. But what I'm saying is for those presenting it, trying to win him over, it's a conundrum. Because what do you do with that? So I think those are all good points in terms of what to do with Alito. On the other hand, it's pretty clear he's corrupt and biased. And, when you add in Thomas and you add in Kavanaugh, Thomas and Kavanaugh specifically, because didn't they have loans that suddenly got magically repaid and nobody ever tried to find out why? And
yes, so we certainly
left that
recall
out
that
of the whole discussion.
The case.
There's a court here that is easily disrespected because they certainly give the appearance of corruption. They give the appearance of corruption. And judges
that's a problem
and justices are supposed to bend over backwards to try to avoid the appearance of bias and corruption. And that's not what we have here.
Right. Well, that's true. And it wouldn't be difficult. I would say probably the regular United States flag, frequently sold at outlets near you, easy to get, and typically the thing that people will put on flagpoles at their homes. Not hard.
So, that's as far as that goes. So, call it the
flags.
pine tree flag, call it the appeal to heaven flag, same thing.
All right, I will.
Gadsden flag, the
That's
don't
the
tread on me
snake
flag,
one.
same thing.
The snake, no step on snake.
Yeah, don't step on the pine tree.
Yeah, right. Well, don't do that either. I went with the pine sol flag. I like that very much.
Or
And the
you
air
could
freshener flag.
You could just
as well.
basically hang the don't step on heaven flag.
All the things. There's one with a big foot. And a
That's
prohibited
Monty Python
sign.
style, right?
Yeah, right. The big slash. No step. Yeah. Well, we had an interesting variety of colonial flags, some of which were dumber than
history's
others.
good.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen that flag at, I guess, historical reenactments or something. And all right, so it says heaven on it, so I guess the Christian nationalists love it.
Well, there should be a Saturday morning history rocks cartoon, to teach the kids.
Yes. And this, I'm amazed at all of the conservatives disregarding the teachers of the old, those old stalwarts, the the Westboro Baptist Church. As you know, God hates flags. I believe that's what they used to hold the signs. It said that, and I may be wrong about that.
Right, and they used to sing a song from the old cartoon show, "I'm Just a Flag." Remember that one? It was just a classic. Everybody remembers it.
Oh boy,
it taught you about flags.
It did, and all the different kinds that we had. So it's a lesson in history, and it's a lesson to find out what parts of history are being hijacked by wackos. And
I think it's a scandal that Mike Johnson flies that flag. And again, you want to make it complicated. Well, freedom of religion. Well, freedom from religion. And what's going on here.
There's religious flags.
They do it, and they get away with it, and so that's the current state of the United States.
Yeah. All right, well, so it is. It's funny. I never really thought of it as much of a religious flag, but I guess that's
exactly
what they're making
it
into.
And if it weren't, they wouldn't be flying it.
I guess not. I thought it was interesting for a justice of the Supreme Court from whom there's no appeal to be flying an appeal flag, but he's focusing on the heaven part.
Right. Now, Andrew Michael Kreese, who generally a Georgia State law professor who generally analyzes what's going on with Fani Willis in the case down there.
Okay, yes.
Makes an interesting point about this when he says, to me, Anthony Michael Kreese, to me, somebody's playing their own version of constitutional hardball, hitting Alito and the court's reputation a few weeks before two major January 6 related cases are set to be issued. The flag story's delay isn't negligence. Somebody's being strategic. That is to say, trying to put a little pressure on them to be fair, as in, well, you've accused me of not being fair. I'm going to show you I can be fair, at least for this case, so I can then go back to doing what I do in all the other cases.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know about whether
and
the
if you
delay
already
is
knew,
from
because
that.
they know what's going on with that.
Okay.
Amongst themselves. If they already knew that, he's on a losing side of the case, you can afford to do that.
Okay. I guess that's the thing. I don't know about why. The story was delayed 3 years. I don't know if the whole time. It doesn't make any sense. Let's not talk about it until the case comes to the Supreme Court. But, if you find out about it.
Because people who know about that beach house knew about that flag a long time ago. Why is it only coming out now?
I don't know. That part of the announcement.
Flag only coming out now?
Yeah. The initial delay.
Because the first one came.
Yes.
But why did
probably.
the first one come out now?
Yeah. I understand why bring it forward now. I don't know about whether there was, I can't see anybody in 2021 saying, hold on, don't tell anybody, even though the insurrection is fresh in everybody's mind. Let's wait for the case to come around to the Supreme Court, and then, okay, probably not. They probably ignored it for a number of other parts of the government.
Right, but why bring it up now? In other words, you could have still ignored it. It's not that, I waited until now. Yes. It's more like, look, I ignored it when I saw it. I could have continued to ignore it. Why did the public have to know about this right at this moment?
Yes, that's that part of the timing I understand. Okay, and well,
I was under no obligation to publish. I could have, just buried it like I buried it, the whole entire time.
Right, and I mean everybody's interested in the flag story. Flags are always getting read about, so you could have published at any time.
Right. So let's move to a different court. Let's move to New York.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I've lived in New York, so moving there isn't like a super big deal. Right,
sure. Short drive. Let's go.
But we have Andrew Weissman. Now that the trial has slowed down a bit for jury instructions.
Yes.
By that I mean the two sides are arguing about what exact instructions should be there. Yes. And this is where you go over what's the underlying crime, how much of Trump's intent needs to be proven to the jury. This is in the jury instructions that the judge gives, and why it's so crucial to how the case goes.
Okay, yes.
So as a brief summary, again, a factual summary, Andrew Weissman helpfully tweets this. A primer, or if you're British, a primer.
Oh, yeah.
They're having elections, by the way. We'll get to that maybe. A primer on what the Trump jury can do as to the 34 counts, which means 34 verdicts.
Okay.
There were 11 checks and 12 ledger entries and 12 invoices. And that is what they're going on. But, or 11 ledgers and 12 invoices, but it adds up to 34 that way and not 36 because of the January-February check being a single check for $70,000. There were 12 checks for $35,000 scattered throughout the year, January to December, but January-February was a single check, so that is 11.
Outrageous.
Another entry that is a crime because it was misleading and false.
Okay.
Makes it 11. That's 22. And then one of them was the month-by-month ledger for the Trump organization, 12 of those, and that adds up to 34. So what each one is a separate count.
Okay.
So the jury could convict on all counts.
Why not? Go ahead.
That would take 12 jurors.
Oh, all right.
They would acquit on all counts. That would take 12 jurors. They could hang on all counts.
Okay.
They could acquit on some, hang on the rest. Yes. That's a split verdict.
Okay.
They could convict on some and hang on the rest, like you can convict Trump on the checks, but not the ledger stuff. Because Trump didn't do the ledger stuff.
Right.
He directed the ledger stuff to be done, but it's a jury. They decide. Okay. And then if they're hung counts can be retried. Whereas acquitted counts are final.
Okay.
Convicted counts can be appealed.
Right.
So, just an idea, well, what does it all mean at the end of the day if the jury comes up with, they convicted him on most counts and hung on a few others? Well, those hung ones can be retried. Yes, but Trump can appeal, and the legal eagles who thought this was a really bad case are going to say, and Trump may win on appeal. Appeal's going to be like, judicial timeline. Like
in New York.
It's 1992 as far as the political universe is
That's
concerned.
true. There is a place where it would be fine to slow things down for once. Right? You appeal. You're convicted. You're appealing your conviction. Right now, you're a convict, and in 6 years, we'll tell you whether you're not.
Talk about bells can't be unrung. The headline there would be first former U.S. president to be convicted of a felony. Convicted felon. I mean, you can't take those back. And so, all of that is since the only trial that's going to happen prior to the election.
Yes,
it's the most important of the four, even though my opinion from on high as an elite is that this is the least important Well, actually, it's the most important because it's the one that's happening.
Yeah, so practical value there. Okay. And Trump can appeal to heaven.
It's a tremendous damage to Trump. Well, they're not going to, doesn't make any difference. He's going to fundraise off of it. Voters won't, none of that's all crap.
Okay. Well, I mean, he fundraises.
What it does
off
is
of
it exposes Trump for everything about him and the way he does business. And for those people, like Nikki Haley, who are going to vote for him anyway, it doesn't make any difference. But for people who haven't really decided what they're going to do or voted for Haley in the primary, not Haley herself, but her voters, people. Who are far more important than she is, far more important, it does matter. Mm-hmm. And people are following the trial. They're not following it like the O.J. Simpson trial because it's not on TV. But a conviction would carry a tremendous amount of weight. And the polls have all said, I don't know about this trial, but if he's convicted, I don't like that.
Okay. I mean, that sounds normal. And
it is normal. And in a close election, everything matters.
Yes.
So I continue to believe it matters. And I think that things are coming to a head. On Tuesday, by then, they should be finished with arguing about what the jury instructions will be.
Okay.
So on Tuesday, they do closing arguments, one for each side.
I think they should close. I think they should not. And that's how it will go.
Right. And then the judge gives the instructions to the jury, which is going to take an hour. And then they start deliberating, and then we find out.
Awesome.
And as we said the other day, there's lots of forms to fill out and other administrative stuff, so it won't be like within 15 minutes they come back and said, he is so guilty, we all knew that from day one.
I mean, they may be ready to do that, but they do have – it's like going to the doctor, right? You got examined for 15 minutes. You got to fill out the points
before you even get in the room.
I've filled these out before. I know. Do it again.
Or even better, getting your blood drawn.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that takes like 2 seconds.
It's very quick.
But it's 45 minutes to fill out the forms and wait in the room and, get ready.
What do you mean? Have I ever had sciatica? I'm getting blood drawn. And you're the doctor. You tell me if I've ever had sciatica. Yeah. It's amazing. All right. Well,
we have to know.
I guess. I was wondering why.
And I know you gave us your insurance card, but give us your insurance card again.
Yeah. All right.
But I just did that 15 minutes ago. Yeah, well, it's out of date. We have to do it again.
I want you to write down all the information on the card, then give me the card so I can photocopy it.
Right.
Then, have you ever had colon cancer? What? I'm going to get it waiting. All right.
I just want you to do it. So the administrative parts of it.
It makes sense. So, I mean, it doesn't make sense. We understand that the foolish things that will waste a lot of time are going to happen. All right.
And then let me give you yet another court-related sort of story here.
Sure. Another court. If we get to 4 courts, it's a gallon.
But this is a legal issue.
Yes.
And this comes from ProPublica, and they just published
that. So they do. Oh, public
for the people.
Publisher. They should call themselves ProPublica. Yes.
Yeah. They're definitely pro-publishing because they really like to publish.
They're constantly doing this. So another court. Which one?
Which gives you an idea of what's going on. For the women who accused the Trump campaign, and let me be clear, this is not Donald Trump. This is his campaign. This is his staffers.
Oh boy.
This is the Corey Lewandowskis of the world.
For
the women who accused the Trump campaign of harassment, it's been harassment, more harassment. Trump is well known for publicly bullying his political rivals, but the former president's campaign has also used similar tactics to launch private, relentless attacks against some of its own workers. Nearly 8 years ago, convinced she'd been treated unfairly, Jessica Denson sued Trump's campaign for workplace harassment. Then she discovered the lengths Trump's attorney would go to hit back and their unwillingness to stop. Immediately, the campaign filed a counterclaim for $1.5 million and won a $52,229 judgment, and the campaign froze her bank account and almost forced her into bankruptcy.
It did, and won.
Campaign lawyers branded her a judgment debtor. In a subpoena, they monitored her Twitter account, which had 32 followers, and submitted hundreds of pages of printouts to a judge, deposed her mother, grilling her about the family's religious practices. I suppose they asked whether or not they
what kind of flag you got?
Appeal to heaven flag or not. The judgment was ultimately thrown out by a judge, but her legal fight continues, and the process has been unbearable and it's been crippling. The legal resources deployed to try to crush Denson's case are not unusual. Now, you can't bring this stuff into the trial, but if you're trying to figure out Stormy Daniels' credibility as to whether or not Trump would do something like an NDA and trying to get her not to talk, well, duh.
That seems easy enough. Yeah. Clearly, it's something they're
Doesn't make any difference to Nikki Haley,
with.
but it makes a difference to the suburbs of Philadelphia, where Pennsylvania will be decided. The legal resources deployed to try to crush Denson's case are not unusual. At least 4 women of color involved in the 2016 operation have been embroiled in legal fights with the campaign over workplace harassment, subject to scorched earth tactics. We saw that with Ruby Freeman and Shane Moss.
Yes.
For years, the Trump campaign has persisted despite losing consistently in at least some cases after it was clear the efforts had damaged the women. So they go to court, they lose, and they keep doing it.
They're lousy people.
Now, this is in the court, so they don't have to prove it, but what they say here in the article, Trump was regularly updated on the women's cases, according to 2 people familiar with the matters. In one, he wanted to escalate the dispute by filing a federal defamation lawsuit against the former employee, but his lawyers persuaded him it was best handled through confidential arbitration. Campaign lawyers urged him to settle the ongoing legacy lawsuits from 2016. This goes back to the 2016 campaign, before the 2020 election, but Trump refused.
He's not really a great litigator.
But here's the kicker.
Okay.
As Trump engages in another presidential run, a judge's order in one of those cases may force into public view the new details about staffers who lodged similar accusations.
All right.
A federal magistrate judge has ordered the campaign to produce by May 31st a list of all discrimination and harassment complaints made during Trump's 2016 and 2020 presidential runs. Allegations the campaign tried to keep confidential through NDAs.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right.
So some of
Not
that stuff
very
may
good
come
job.
to light before the election.
I would love that. I mean, look, if it's during the summer, if it's what I think, I love it. But yeah, it's funny. I haven't heard much about that case, and I don't know. I guess Trump loves the Streisand effect, so let's go. I guess. Yeah. Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and patreon.com, patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I almost forgot that we were going to do the show. I'm reading the ProPublica article.
Well, it's really interesting, and David likes details, but a lot of the details aren't in here. It's more a story that this is going to be released, and here's the background, rather than this is exactly what happened, where it happened, who is being accused, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I want
all
both
we know
sides.
is that a magistrate judge, one of the lower lying, in the hierarchy judges in the federal system, is going to release the information, at some point. But here's where this article now goes into sort of editorializing, which I love, and ties it to the trial in New York.
Okay.
And says, as is being revealed now in the Stormy Daniels case, Trump's chaotic 2016 campaign was governed by one overriding public relations strategy: lock down any whiff of scandal that could be unflattering or compromising to the candidate. We know that from David Pecker's testimony. That's an established fact at this point. Trump's campaign used a trio of tools, the article says, borrowed largely from the Trump organization to ensure that. So basically, they applied mob boss techniques to the campaign. Allegations were met with swift denials. Employees were bound to silence by onerous NDAs that imposed a lifetime ban on disparaging Trump, his extended family, or any of his companies. And the campaign's lawyers brought in a phalanx of Trump-savvy outside lawyers prepared to crush. Phalanx,
Wow.
That's like an old word for the Roman army formation.
Yes. Phalanx. It crops up from time to time.
How
Naval
much the
weapon
campaign
as well.
has poured into such efforts is unclear, but it's likely millions, according to spending reports. Trump's bills for his many legal challenges have topped $100 million, and workplace harassment claims aren't broken out. Trump's use of donor money is legal, but experts say he's pushed the limits of laws that forbid using campaign contributions for legal matters that have nothing to do with running for office.
That's that's a great
By
way
the
to
way, we're going to
access
see that discussed in New York.
Yeah. Great way to
In this
access
trial.
the campaign money for legal fees is to have your campaign staff sexually harass people.
Right.
Then you can do it. That's
The
why.
campaign faced its
I
first
see.
known discrimination complaint in January 2016 when Iowa field organizer Elizabeth Davidson filed the case. The law student had been fired and accused of violating her NDA by making disparaging comments. She said she had been underpaid because she was a woman. Davidson dropped the case without explanation in 2018 and didn't return phone calls. Then they brought
That
out
sounds
heavy
suspicious.
artillery to try to discredit another female employee who filed a federal lawsuit in February 2019, Alva Johnson. A field operations director in Alabama alleged pay disparities in a hostile workplace, but the most explosive allegation was that Trump engaged in sexually predatory conduct by kissing her without permission during a Florida campaign event. I vaguely remember that story.
Yeah, okay.
To handle her case,
Stay in Alabama then.
the campaign hired attorney Charles Harder, best known for winning a privacy case in 2016 that financially destroyed the gossip website Gawker. That was a Hulk Hogan case.
Yeah,
Harder's
okay.
firm was paid $4.3 million for legal work on a number
they?
of campaign cases between 2018 and 2021. Trump was then in the White House, and spokesperson Sarah Huckabee Sanders called Johnson's accusation absurd.
I don't see what's absurd about it, but okay. That's Sarah Huckabee Sanders for you.
Right? Harder produced a video filmed by an unnamed supporter showing Trump kissing Johnson near her mouth as he approached her for the first time in a reception line, and argued the video showed the kiss wasn't forced. And Johnson's lawyers argued to prove the kiss was real and unwelcome. A Trump-appointed judge threw out Johnson's case in 2019. What's the state of our legal system? We were just talking about Sam Alito. Our legal system is such that whenever a judge does something, you now have to tell the public who appointed the judge.
Yes, that's true.
That's how low things have gotten. Even in the Bush administration, you didn't do that.
Didn't they? Okay. Well,
It's like
I'm certainly
every
used to
single
it now.
story is, okay, well, who appointed the judge?
Sure. Yeah, that's a necessary part of.
A judge named Karismarik, who appointed them?
Yeah.
A judge named Hope did what? Who appointed them?
Yeah.
Alito did what? Who appointed him?
Well, now I'll have to report
Thomas?
on, do they
Who
have a
appointed him?
flagpole? What's on it? Are they Christian nationalists? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well-
A Trump-appointed judge threw out Johnson's case in 2019. She said recently in an interview she chose not to refile a complaint because she was frightened for herself and her family. I definitely heard about every possible way I could die, she said. We lived in a cul-de-sac and they would just drive around with the Trump flags in the cul-de-sac.
Well, that's what they do normally.
Yeah. I mean,
Even if there's nobody
it's not
suing them
mob
there.
boss technique or anything.
They just like to drive around with flags.
And then they go on to talk about the kind of harassment they did, subpoenaing bank statements. At one point, Johnson said Harder offered to withdraw the complaint if she would apologize to Trump and leave the NDA in place. She refused. Trump wanted to countersue her for defamation, but his lawyers talked him out of it. In response to questions, Harder said his legal tactics were 100% permissible discovery in an employment case, and her attorneys didn't object. It's litigation and it's part of the legal process.
All right.
But
I mean,
the point of the article here is that the arbitration dragged on long after Harder's own firm withdrew. They brought in new outside lawyers, and basically they continued to hassle her.
yeah. Well, you bring in the big guns until they stop getting paid and they get tired of it, and then they leave and they bring in smaller guns who work until they don't, until they realize they're not getting paid.
So, you wanted some details. Here's some details.
Yes, give me some details. Not about the harassment, but
A discrimination case pending in a Manhattan court, however, might force the culture of Trump's previous campaigns and their suppression efforts into the light. Arlene A.J. Delgado sued the 2016
Oh,
campaign
yeah.
and 3 senior officials for discrimination after she became pregnant by her supervisor, Jason Miller, who was
This one I
then the
remember.
campaign's chief spokesperson. Trump had called Delgado a rising star.
Mm-hmm.
So it's in Manhattan. It
Nice.
involves
Well, we know where that is.
Jason Miller, and the plaintiff is Arlene A.J. Delgado.
So it's possible to accidentally wander into the wrong Trump trial in the Manhattan courtroom. Oh, I was here for the one where he's on trial as the criminal defendant. I didn't realize this was the sexual harassment one against his campaign. Sorry.
Wait. I'm not certain here whether this is a New York case or a federal case.
Oh,
Could still happen in the New York
that's true.
court, and
right.
it could be like
no,
10
you said
feet
it was
away from each
federal,
other.
I think.
But
right.
I'm not clear.
That's true. All right. Well, so in other words, I guess if you turn the wrong way at the hot dog cart and go into the wrong court building, they're all within walking distance.
When
and
you're
then
allowed
you
to
think
eat in
you're
the
in the
hall
right
and when
place.
you're not.
Yeah, I thought I was in the right place. It's a Trump
So
trial.
you better know
No.
because you just
Better.
bought a hot dog.
Yeah, right. Non-returnable. So, yeah, all right. I didn't realize this was the federal courthouse. I thought I was in the right place. This is a Trump case. Yes, true, but not the one you were thinking of. Oh, all right. And not the Florida one? No. And this is somebody, now there is a Florida one, but she was working in Alabama, but she got kissed in Florida, so I don't know where the lawsuit is being filed.
Right. So nobody's responding to comment.
Why would you?
Scanning through here, and I still cannot figure out whether it's a federal or a state case.
I thought you had mentioned that it was
But the federal judge's
magistrate.
decision in October 2023 to void NDAs for all 2016 employees
right, there was
a
that.
blow to the campaign. The campaign agreed to pay $450,000 to the original person, Denison's lawyers. Denson's lawyers, not to be confused with David Denison, which is an alias for Donald Trump,
Right.
and to no longer pursue employees for NDAs. Denson said her problems began when she went to work for the campaign's data division, so it's back to that whole story. And I am still not sure here. She did file a lawsuit in New York State Court in November 2017 claiming emotional distress as a result of pervasive slander. But then the campaign sued her for $1.5 million in damages for that. So that was a state case for Denson. But where Delgado's, different case, different person, is going to be revealed in March 2021 in regard to Denson, a federal judge declared her individual NDA invalid under New York state contract law. So it really gets complicated in terms of whether this
federal
is a state
judge,
or a federal case.
State law. It does happen. I mean, that's still a federal case, but sometimes federal judges have to decide matters of state law. All right. Well, I mean, it is very complicated, and this is remember, Trump. If you're thinking of voting for Trump, say you're Nikki Haley or something like that. No other candidate keeps such a large, phalanx of lawyers in so many states to fend off the same charge over and over and over again that he just can't stop harassing women. He won't stop his staff from harassing women. And he, I guess, advises his staff as he advises himself. If you harass women and they complain, we will sue them for defamation. And we'll do it in federal court and state court in all 50 states. Go ahead, keep harassing the women. Why people keep signing on to work for his campaign to eventually not get paid and then get harassed, I don't know. But I don't know. It's the same world where Nikki Haley campaigns against him and then says, yeah, I'll vote for him. So, okay.
Okay, so phalanx was actually the Greeks and the Romans fought against it. And it was very good defensively, but not all that mobile. So the Romans usually just went around the front guys with shields and just sort of attacked them from the back. It was a pretty effective tactic. So that's the story. Anyway, it's interesting to me that everything that the Trump trial in New York regarding Michael Cohen and Stormy Daniels revealed is corroborated by being reminded of everything else Trump did.
Yeah, right.
Except that's not
true.
allowed to be brought into the trial.
Interesting.
Because this is whether or not you're guilty on falsifying documents. It's a document trial.
Yeah, so you could stand there. They would be objected to, but you could stand there and say, For all the whole defense in this case is, oh gosh, I didn't do this to Stormy Daniels. She's making it all up.
Even better. The defense was he would never do this.
Oh,
He's
right.
a family man.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
what they said in their opening argument.
Right. He's only being sued in all 50 states by 36 women for doing, not the same thing. But
One of
sexual
them,
harassment.
He tried to kiss.
Yes.
But others are his staff. So you'd have to argue there's a permissive atmosphere and a attack the accuser mentality spread throughout the campaign going back to 2016. And this New York State case that Trump is on trial for, where he has to show up in the courtroom, and Juan Merchan is doing a good job of being a fair-minded judge. That's the whole atmosphere about everything that happened here. And so as many of the legal eagles on cable TV and talking heads have said, people disparage circumstantial evidence because Perry Mason would always dismiss it as it's just circumstantial, but in fact it can be extraordinarily powerful.
Yes, there's nothing wrong with circumstantial evidence, but people do remember from the scripting that that's something's wrong with circumstantial evidence. Nothing's wrong with it. It's not as strong as direct evidence, but it's
which Michael
fine.
Cohen brought, and that's all he was there for, and corroborated the circumstantial. And then Robert Costello gets up and says everything that Michael Cohen said is a lie, and the prosecutor said yes, but didn't you say this when the opposite happened? And didn't you say this, but here's your email proving the opposite happened? And here's yet a third case and here's another case. And so, you can't be believed.
Yeah.
And that was the last
harassing women everywhere?
witness. And so that's what the jury remembers while they take a week break.
Okay. Yeah, it's something for them to think about.
Now, you're not supposed to read about this case.
Oh, right. You're not.
Okay, but what if they read ProPublica about all the other cases?
I don't know. That's a good, yeah, right. Doesn't matter because that's not being brought into evidence in this case. I think you should probably, I think they're probably tired of hearing about Trump, and there's just a little bit of self-policing in that. Just for my own sanity, I don't want to read anything about Trump.
I think so. If I'm the jury and nobody can predict what a jury does, I'm thinking at this point he's guilty of sin, but I really need to understand the technical aspects of what I'm supposed to be doing here.
Yeah. Might be reading.
That's where jury instructions come in, and that's why the jury instructions are going to decide the case.
Okay.
For the jury, who will then formally decide the case.
Yeah. It would be interesting, given the record of Trump's defense counsel in this case, the things that they've walked into, I could see them filing a late motion to try to disqualify some of the jurors. And then asking them, so why do you think they need to be disqualified? Because they spent the weekend reading about how often Trump sexually harasses people in other states. And as you know, that's impermissible in this case. Oops, I just brought it into this case. Oh, what did I do that for?
The Tuesday closing arguments are going to be really, really interesting.
Yeah.
And, it's boring, but the hour-long jury instruction thing is obviously going to be key, but I'll let actual analysts analyze what that means.
All right.
In terms of, trying to define specific words like unlawfully. But for the closing argument, it's a story. And the prosecution has convincingly written a very compelling script about what happened, corroborating it with witnesses. And the defense has been all over the place and actually did a pretty poor job in storytelling.
Yeah.
Now they have the advantage in that they don't have to prove anything. They simply have to
it would be nice if they did.
Have the jury think that there's reasonable doubt something else can happen. But they never presented a alternative theory of the case about what happened. They never did that. You don't always. Sometimes the defense doesn't put anybody on the stand and say a defense rests as soon as the prosecution is done, and then tells the jury they didn't prove their case, and you haven't, shown with beyond all reasonable doubt that everything happened the way it said. There's lots of doubt. Look at all the stuff that's been brought up, and that's how the defense does it. That's not what they did this time. Mm-hmm. They brought one witness who sort of blew holes in their entire story, and so you look at them and say the prosecution did a good job, and the defense did a terrible job.
Yes.
And I'm not sure what the jury's going to do, but we'll find out.
Right. Well, it was an unusual thing. The defense calls Robert Costello. He did it. The defense rests. All right. What did he do that for? Oh, man. All right. Well, summation should be interesting. And, we'll see. They had some real trouble at opening arguments, with the opening argument getting objected to and stricken from the record in some cases. You have a lot more latitude in closing if normally, because normally you will have entered evidence that you can then discuss in detail. But if you didn't enter any, then...
the jury, again, these are lay people. There's 2 lawyers, but the other 10 are lay people. Are going to be looking at body language, and they're going to be looking at, what kind of show did you put on, and
body odor as well.
Did you make me sympathetic toward what you were doing, or do I just think you're an a-hole?
Yeah, and at that point they'll be thinking about how often this guy dozed off and and then went outside and screamed at the media. So, all right. Well, I don't like that guy very much. What can I tell you? I tried to be neutral, but, I mean, he was sleeping right in our face.
Right. Now, here's an interesting development, let's say.
All right.
In the Nikki Haley story, which is that she held back, and then for some unknown reason decided yesterday that she wasn't going to endorse Trump, but she would announce that she was going to vote for him.
That's an endorsement.
It's all but. And so you step back and say, why?
Why?
Why did she do that now? I mean, not why. Why did Nikki Haley do this? Nikki Haley is a craven politician who is entirely drawn, pushed, and run by ambition. We get that.
All right.
The fact that she, as a Republican, would ultimately, like all the other Republicans, say that she would vote for Trump is understandable, not acceptable, but hardly shocking.
One might say, yes. Okay.
But there's 2 things, and it was interesting. Morning Joe spent an hour talking about this because they're into politics.
Oh. Well, yeah, they have an hour to fill.
And they have 4 hours to fill.
Several, right, yeah, okay.
But their take was, first of all, why did she do it now, which they didn't answer. And secondly, in endorsing Trump or saying that she would vote for him, there's ways that she could have done it. Like, I can't vote for Biden because of his Afghanistan policy. I can't vote for Biden because I'm unhappy with how he's managing the Middle East, stuff like that, which is basically, okay, fine, whatever.
Okay.
But she didn't do that. She didn't mention them. She talked about the border, the economy. She basically lied about everything. Every single reason she said Biden is a disaster, I can't vote for him, was a lie. She didn't have to, but she chose to do it that way. And perhaps even more to the point, this article, why now? This is from the Wall Street Journal last week.
So why then?
A week and a half ago, on the 9th of May, 2024. Nikki Haley is huddling with donors and won't endorse Donald Trump yet. Some of her supporters want her to run for president in 2028, but she's watching from the sidelines for now. So clearly, the money people in the party who were still on speaking terms with her and or her donors for her run for president after she said she wouldn't run for president if Donald Trump ran. And then she ran. And then she said, he's terrible, he's awful, I won't kiss his ring, and I can't vote for him, said she'd vote for him, which gives you an idea of her character. Nonetheless, it seems like the reason she's doing this now is that she just took a job at the Hudson Institute, which is one of those Republican think tanks.
Yeah.
And her donors have persuaded her that the only way she has any kind of future in the Republican Party at all, especially given what she did, is she better say that she's voting for Trump. I don't think she's doing it because she wants to be Trump's VP. Trump has already said, I don't want her voters and she can't be my VP. Now, Trump lies too, so you don't know. True. But, it seems unlikely to me because she has her own political ambitions. She has her own brand. I don't think Trump would want to be upstaged by anybody after what happened with Mike Pence. Pence wasn't invisible enough.
Which is amazing.
which is why Doug Burgum is a leading candidate. He's got money, and he's a cipher.
Yes.
He's an empty suit with money. Perfect.
Oh, yeah. Don't say anything.
I'm surprised he didn't announce
checks.
that he's running with Michael Huffington. I mean, because that's the kind of character that Burgum is, and that's exactly what he wants.
Interesting. Okay. There's a lot of that going around these days.
Yeah. So, that's the Nikki Haley story. But, it's just sort of interesting. And will it make any difference? No, I don't think her voters are at least been interested in who she's voting for. Because her voters weren't voting for her. The ones that were voting in the primary, 20%, even though the primary is already decided and she had pulled out of the race.
Yeah.
Right? Her voters are voting against Trump. They're not voting for her.
Yes, that's a good point.
And we've seen those data. Half of them just won't vote for Trump. So, I don't think that her semi-endorsement, her definitive "I'll vote for him" comment is going to make any difference whatsoever. Would it have made a difference if she had endorsed Joe Biden? I don't think so. I just don't think she's that influential a figure.
No, well, there is that.
Right? I think that the only play that would make her important is if she became the vice president, because she would be put on as the face of the moderate to go talk to everybody about Trump's fascist tendencies. Now, that's dangerous, but I don't think that's happening.
Yeah. All right. Well,
here's a story from 19th News.
19th.
Nikki Haley says she'll vote for Trump but doesn't quite endorse him.
Again.
The former ambassador painted Trump as dangerous and unstable on the campaign trail, saying, "I feel no need to kiss the ring," but of course she's kissing the ring.
Yes. And in the Trump campaign, if you don't kiss the ring will kiss you. Don't worry about it. Someone's getting kissed here. Regardless. This much we know. All right. Oops. We lost Greg.
There you go. You're back.
Okay.
Wasn't
All right.
me.
All right. I thought you were like, I said, I quit this stupid show.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. Well, like I said, either you kiss the ring, or in the Trump campaign, like in Yakov Smirnov's Soviet Union, the ring kisses you in the Trump administration.
Exactly.
In
February 10th remarks on the campaign trail, she said, if you mock the service of a combat veteran, you don't deserve a driver's license, let alone being president of the United States. In an appearance on CBS's Face the Nation, she said Trump's comments about service members reflected a pattern of chaos and irresponsibility, and therefore I'm voting for him.
Yeah, you don't deserve a driver's license, but you could be president of the United States. And is there a flag for this? I'm not sure.
Now, to highlight all of this, Washington Post has an interesting story. Marianne Levine has, for Trump, 2 days filled with backpedaling and baseless attacks. We talked about some of these on Monday and Wednesday.
Yeah.
You talked about them on Monday, and I talked about them with you on Wednesday. And
well, those are 2 days.
Tuesday, you might have talked about it even without me being there. For Trump, 2 days filled with backpedaling. The dizzying sequence of events offered a glimpse of Trump's volatile bid for a second term in the White House, one filled with legal uncertainty, escalating attacks, and comments he and his campaign have had to back away from or recast. In under 48 hours this week, Trump's social media account promoted a video featuring a term frequently associated with Nazi Germany and later removed it, the Reich one.
Right.
He suggested he was open to states restricting access to contraceptives and then walked that back. He falsely accused Biden of being locked and loaded to take me out, even though it's boilerplate to say deadly force might be used if you resist. And in fact, when Biden's house was raided by the FBI for documents, it had the same deadly force document clearly proving that Biden wanted to assassinate Biden.
Yes, well, you're allowed to do that as well now.
And in between, he was in court as his legal team rested its case in his ongoing criminal trial. I don't think this helps him with normies. I just don't. The dizzying sequence of events offered a glimpse of Trump's volatile bid. This week, Trump gave a potential opening to Democrats on topics they're eager to challenge him over, including abortion and reproductive rights.
Yes.
Interestingly,
boringly enough, yeah,
I think that Trump made a mistake with his comments on contraception.
Always.
Alex Conan, a GOP strategist who worked on Marco Rubio's campaign in 2016, said this is mostly noise, but when the noise gets loud enough, people notice. They hear it.
Okay.
Right? So I think he made a mistake on abortion. He was better off with, as you pointed out the other day, going with his patented formula of, we'll make an announcement soon about this.
And he did eventually say that in the same comments. He just got lost in the comments.
Yeah, he should have just said that and nothing else.
Right.
But Greg Sargent makes a case that Reich video wasn't a mistake at all.
Yes.
That what he was doing is he wanted to put it out and he was going to pull it back, and he just wanted to see the reaction and get a sense of how far he could go.
Oh, okay.
Because that's what he does. That's what he does.
It does
with
sound
the
a
law,
little suspiciously like a plan, though. And I never really truly suspected he's planning anything, but...
Trump and his... Well, look at Project 2025. Meanwhile, Trump and his allies are aggressively seeding the discourse with fascistic... The fascist language. That's much worse.
Okay. Yes. All right. Well, testing the grounds for horrible stances of the future. Yeah. All right.
Right.
I can believe that.
So his campaign spokesperson insisted the video was created by a random account and posted by an unnamed staffer. It now appears the tweet has been deleted, no doubt by somebody not named Donald Trump.
He doesn't know how to delete things.
Right. David Dennison did it.
No.
The campaign's initial story about the video may or may not prove true, but as we debate these specifics, let's not lose sight of a larger point. Trump and his highest profile allies have plainly embarked on a broader related project, one that seeks to acclimatize the American electorate to fascistic language and far-reaching authoritarian policy solutions. They're slowly edging the discourse deeper into that fraught territory, as if painstakingly testing how far they can take this without provoking too much public discomfort.
Okay.
Whatever the precise intent of the video, new information emerging about it helps illuminate the point. Trump, his loyalists, and large swaths of his movement are edging the outer boundaries of mainstream political discourse in an overtly authoritarian direction.
That seems true.
And then goes on about the guy who created it. We talked about him the other day.
Yeah.
As longtime GOP strategists Brian Riedel and Elisa Farah-Griffin pointed out, the video's very creation only illustrate the existence of a large junior staffer set that's fluent in online fascist political language, which Trump and his operatives see as indispensable to their own movement. Don't forget, in 2016, it was the stupid frog.
Oh, right, Pepe. Yeah.
Pepe the frog.
Right.
So they're not doing that. They're doing this.
Okay. I mean, it's not okay to do that.
I mean, it wasn't just
Trump.
Doing it.
Yeah.
Ron DeSantis had a similar video that he had to back off from.
Yeah,
I mean, it's out there. There are people creating this. They talk about among themselves, and so it's good that it gets exposed.
Yeah. Well, several people writing on the exposure of it and discussing the weirdos who apparently, make a decent living making Trump look like a complete out-of-control fascist maniac. And I don't know why they get paid for that, but they do, and they seem to enjoy it. And bad news for America in general. Well, thanks, Greg. We'll see you next week. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. So, let's see, there's an awful lot happening that we haven't even touched on yet, but let's linger on the things that we have. Greg had mentioned, I had set aside as well, Greg Sargent's piece on the weirdos behind the Trump video with the Reich thing, et cetera, and I guess he borrowed rather extensively from it. I mean, it's a decent article, and there are chunks of it yet to run through. It's not too long, though, so maybe we can... I think we could probably say that we got the best parts of it, I think, teased out by our Greg Dworkin, going over Greg Sargent's article at the last minute here. There's probably some detail, but I have some other items that touch on the same subject matter from slightly different angles, and maybe we'll proceed then to those. I have, for instance, I'm surprised that we didn't hear this one recited, but Greg Sargent was just as good. But because our Greg very frequently refers to the Bulwark, I thought this might be in the offing. This from that publication from Mark Caputo, writing a piece entitled "Meet Trump's Human Printer." That's what he calls the staffer Natalie Harp, whose name we've mentioned on the show a couple times. She's the one that came to our attention as the weirdo staffer who tried to sit during the entirety of the trial directly behind Trump so that she could use her portable printer. That's how she's come to be known as the the human printer. A portable printer to print out positive articles about Trump and then hand them to him while he's feeling depressed or falling asleep or farting or whatever he's doing during the trial to keep his spirits up. And then the judge said, what the hell do you think you're doing, by the way? Get back, move to the back of the courtroom, get out of here. And that put her on everybody's radar. And apparently she has kept up the practice throughout this entire 6 weeks. She can't do it from directly behind him, but I guess during breaks or whatever, passes things to the attorneys and keeps it up. Well, apparently she's got some role in all of this as well, and which I think is the case because I have also got an empty wheel article, which who knows in which direction that spins off, but begins by referring to this Bulwark piece. So we'll start with the Bulwark piece. Usually, if you've got two pieces to read and one of them is empty wheels, you would do well to read the other one first so that you have some background, because the references that Marcy will make are multiple and far-flung. So without the program, you're not going to be able to tell the players in Marcy's articles. All right, so let's meet the human printer. Her name is Natalie Harp. She's 32, and she has unbelievable access to the man who might be president again. And, of course, she has unbelievable access to Trump. So you might ask, probably wise to get a clearer picture of things. How old is she, and is she blonde? And the answer is 32 and yes. So whenever Donald Trump brandishes a stack of papers or reads a printout of a social media post, he's relying on the work, if you can call it that, of Natalie Harp. I mean, she's pressing the print button. That's the work of Natalie Harp, but whatever. Harp, 32, occupies a unique role in the history of presidential campaigns, pressing print. Is an aide who travels with a portable printer, plus paper, of course, and rechargeable batteries in a large bag, whose job it is to feed Trump a steady stream of information on 8.5 by 11-inch pieces of paper. I mean, and if you think that's unusual, I guess consider that while you're president, there's another aide whose job it is to walk around with another heavy bag from which you can launch nuclear missiles. So I guess this is not that unusual by that standard. Anyway, so she carries all of this around. Why? Because that way the 77-year-old doesn't have to strain his eyes on a smartphone to read all the news that's fit to print in MAGAville. And, of course, if he strains his eyes reading things, then he'll have to rest those eyes during the trial, and you know what that looks like. Harp's nickname on the campaign, and I imagine there are several, but the one that they're willing to put in print is the human printer. And that underplays her importance. That's because in Trump's orbit, proximity to the principal is power, and is also, difficult and will cause you to go nose blind to odors. Anyway, with her portable printer at the ready, Harp is constantly around Trump, whether she's sitting close to the defense table in the Manhattan courthouse on weekdays or riding the links with Trump on Sundays in Florida. What a terrible job. Perhaps more than anyone else, Harp gatekeeps much of what Trump sees on social media and reads in the news. If you want the president to see something, the best route is Natalie, says a knowledgeable source who spoke on condition of anonymity to describe the internal workings of Trump's inner team and who has passed information to the candidate via Harp. Don't underestimate her importance. It's been an interesting journey for Harp. She comes from a conservative Christian family in California and graduated from Liberty University in 2015. Harp appears to have entered Trump's orbit in 2019. So there. By the way, big endorsement for Liberty University. We train our graduates to press print very authoritatively and very quickly and several times in the same day. Harp appears to have entered Trump's orbit in 2019. The year before, Trump signed into law the Right to Try Act. This is where she came from. We've read this part before, or we've heard this story. What is the Right to Try Act? It's not just the right to try to press print and make a career out of that. It is something completely different. It makes it easier for terminally ill patients to access experimental therapies. Harp said it helped her beat stage 2 cancer, saving her life. Trump first gushed about her in a birthday Fox and Friends interview on June 14th, 2019, when he called attention to the story of that young, beautiful woman, whose name he obviously didn't remember. Harp's looks are a recurring theme in coverage of her that is so shocking and completely out of character for the Donald Trump organization. 12 days after the Fox interview, Trump called Harp on stage at the Faith and Freedom Coalition conference in Washington, where he gave her the highest praise. She lit up the television screen like very few people I've ever seen do it. And he's seen a lot of people on screens, and some of them he's then later met in hotel rooms in Tahoe. I'm not saying that happened with Natalie Harp. I'm just saying that happens a lot with people around Trump, and she is one. There you go. 12 days after the Fox interview, Trump called Harp on stage. Oh, we did this one. For the highest praise. She lit up a television screen. That's the highest praise you can get from Donald Trump. Because there's a first time for everything, Harp then likened Trump to the Good Samaritan, because why not? Harp eventually came to work for Trump's 2020 campaign and delivered another speech at the Republican National Committee. I imagine that's probably the convention that he was thinking of. This time she compared him to Jimmy Stewart's character in It's a Wonderful Life. After 2020, Harp became a One American News Network anchor, where she promoted the lie about the 2020 election being stolen, of course. Then they got sued. She was then hired onto the Trump 2024 campaign last year. Trump has told others that he appreciates Harp's dedication in pressing the print button, and she aligns ideologically with him. She tends to flag items about voter fraud and internal Republican enemies, topics for which Trump has limitless appetite. Trump, for a lot of things, he has limitless appetite. Harp has also helped manage Trump's Truth social media account and has taken over some of the duties from Trump's former caddy turned senior advisor, Dan Scavino. This is the mind of Donald Trump at work here, basically. This can be a taxing job. Can it, really? On Monday, while he was on trial in New York, Trump's Truth social media account reposted a video, first published on Twitter by a supporter, using the handle Ramble Rants, called What Happens After Trump Wins. This is the Unified Reich video. The video featured mock old-fashioned newspaper headlines. One of the sepia-toned faux newspaper stock images included the phrase Unified Reich. Maybe not the best look for a candidate who has dined with actual neo-Nazi Nick Fuentes and joked that he would like to be dictator for a day. This is not even the worst infractions that they're bringing to mind here. But it is interesting, by the way, that these are generated newspaper headlines. Like there was an opportunity for you to put whatever you wanted in those headlines, and you chose to go with Unified Reich. It's very odd, to say the least, which I guess gives support to Greg Sargent's arguments in his piece about it. Anyway, after the Associated Press reported about the video, the Trump campaign deleted the Truth Social post and said that Trump wasn't at fault. This was not a campaign video. It was created by a random account online and reposted by a junior staffer who's around me all the time, who clearly did not see the word or maybe even understand the word. That's possible. While the president was in court, Trump campaign spokeswoman Caroline Leavitt said in a written statement that accused Democrats somehow of being more anti-Semitic than Trump. How did that get in there? I don't know. The campaign wouldn't identify the name of that junior staffer, but sources tell the Bulwark it was Harp. Scavino, one of a few others who has access to Trump's Truth Social account, isn't a junior staffer. Harp couldn't be reached for comment. I don't know why you were looking for logic and all that, but okay, well, he's not a junior staffer. Well, he thinks everybody's a junior staffer. Coffee boys when they get in trouble. The creator of the video, Ramble Rants, posted repeatedly on Twitter that the phrase Unified Reich was part of a template that he bought online and that its presence in the 30-second clip was incidental and unintentional. What's more, the text in the template doesn't even refer to the Nazis' Third Reich. It was lifted from the Wikipedia entry for the First World War and refers to the German Empire formed in 1871, which is in all of the online AI video templates, after all, right? Everybody is constantly using their computers to refer to the First Reich, German Empire in the 1870s with their supercomputers. Anyway, coincidental explanations or excuses aside, the Unified Reich incident serves as another proof point concerning the Trump campaign's close association with a circle of meme makers and speaks to Harp's very online millennial nature. But it's not clear if Harp brings something unique to the campaign or if she's simply filling one of Trump's psychological needs. I think you have it there. The fact that the president needs someone like Natalie around to feed him constant information and take his orders like a conveyor belt, said another source familiar with Harp, if she wasn't doing this, someone else would, because anyone can, really. Portable printer Sherpa isn't the only unique job created under Trump. When he was president, the White House employed staffers to tape back together important documents Trump would tear up and throw away. Of course, that wasn't something that Trump said. I need somebody to tape things together. He didn't want them taped together. That was the White House trying their best to comply at the time before they completely gave up with the Presidential Records Act. Anyway, no one spends as much time on this campaign around him as Natalie, said one insider. That used to be Hope Hicks. She steamed his pants, for Christ's sake. But now it's Natalie Harp. If people think she's an airhead because of her looks, they don't understand how smart she is and how much the president relies on her. What if people think she's an airhead because she doesn't give any evidence of doing anything smart other than pressing the print button? There is that. But she may discuss the articles in depth off mic with Donald Trump, for all I know. And, of course, low bar to sound intelligent next to Donald Trump in discussing these articles. Anyway, the campaign's co-managers, Susie Wiles and Chris LaCivita, don't directly oversee Harp because they probably don't give a crap what she's doing with her time. And the sources said, essentially leave her alone. She just prints stuff. I don't care. I mean, I've seen what she prints. It's not going to change Trump's mind on anything because his mind is barely there. Go ahead. Do what you want. I suppose that would start to worry if she was printing out articles that said that Susie Wiles and Chris LaCivita are terrible and ought to be branded traitors to MAGA and thrown off the campaign. That would bother them. Anyway, Natalie fills a role, and Chris and Susie know that's what he wants, the source said, so they focus on other things. Still, there was some grumbling when Harp and activist Laura Loomer were spotted riding with Trump on Sunday at his West Palm Beach golf course. Some suspected Harp had coordinated the Trump encounter with Loomer, who recently excoriated the campaign and the Republican National Committee for hiring people who, she says, aren't loyal enough to Trump. So maybe she saw that story and said, let's bring Laura Loomer in here, either to keep her happy or whatever. I don't know I don't know whether there's any analysis behind it or whether Natalie Harp just believes everything she reads. Anyway, Loomer said her encounter with Trump at the club had nothing to do with Harp and was a coincidence, even though they were, I guess, riding in the same golf cart. What a coincidence. Loomer said she had been invited to the club by a longtime friend and member who wanted to celebrate her upcoming birthday, of course, by having lunch. She turned 31 on Tuesday. They didn't have lunch together. They just, your birthday present is I want you to drive around in a golf cart with the president and have lunch. With me, though, later. I don't know. It's an unlikely story. Loomer would say only that she had lunch with her friend and Trump and wouldn't talk about what she discussed with the former president, but honestly, who cares? It's pretty evident that there's people who work for President Trump who are loyal, like Natalie, until they're not. And then there are some others who clearly have their own agendas and don't want President Trump seeing certain information so that they can keep the truth away from him. She, Loomer, I guess, said. Natalie does a great job keeping President Trump informed of everything that he needs to be informed about, and the people who have a problem with that need to stop being such crazy control freaks and just allow for President Trump to be Trump, she said. It's time for them to suck it up and shut up, which is something that people have said about Laura Loomer for a long time. But whatever, and she just keeps worming her way back into his presence as well, which, fine, who cares? A bunch of crazy people being crazy together. Let them all hang, I say. All right, well, that was supposed to be a prerequisite to reading Empty Wheel's take on all of this. Usually worth the time, although sometimes it becomes more confusing after reading it, but that's only because so many things are being woven together in a big picture. Let's have a look at what she has to say here. This is about Natalie Harp herself. Natalie Harp, Gatekeeper to the Reich, writes Empty Wheel. I want, she says, to unpack a Mark Caputo story, the one we just read, about Natalie Harp, who says, he says, is the person who posted the Reich meme video to Trump's Truth Social account this week. Trump's account posted the Reich video on Monday. On Tuesday, AP identified a troll, which it describes as a meme creator, Ramble Rants, as the source of the video, and a Wikipedia entry on World War I as the source of the Reich image. You remember reading that, or having me read it to you from the Bulwark article just moments ago. I refer the honorable members to the reply I gave some moments ago, the stock phrase from Prime Minister Question Time. Then, Media Matters described, as the earlier New York Times story also had, that Ramble Rants, Greg told us about this, is part of a trolling group led by a guy named Brendan Dilley that the Trump team has closely integrated with the campaign. So let's see, Media Matters description is here. Regardless of the intention behind the video Trump shared, Dilley and his team's association with the Trump campaign is noteworthy. Trump and his campaign have repeatedly shared the meme team's material, and the campaign reportedly privately communicated with members of the meme team, giving them access and making specific requests for content, and, in at least one instance, shared behind-the-scenes footage to be used in videos, according to members of the team. Trump has been photographed with Dilley and reportedly sent personalized notes to several of the group's members, thanking them for their work. And that sounds familiar, so maybe it was from the New York Times story instead, because I don't think Greg read us the Media Matters story about it. Maybe he did. I don't know. At any rate, I'm not certain which of these, because both links appear beforehand, so I'm not certain which one this is coming from, the Times or Media Matters, but it covers the same material. Additionally, Dilley disclosed that the campaign gave him and another member of the meme team a special and exclusive press credential for the campaign's Iowa caucuses night, where you hang out with all these wonderful people, and Don Jr. comes through, and Eric Trump comes through, and pretty much the entire team Trump comes through, by which we mean breeze right past you, and, you know, you're in close proximity to them briefly, but I guess that's very thrilling for a person like you. Anyway, reporting has indicated that several journalists from mainstream publications, including The Washington Post, NBC News, Axios, and Vanity Fair, have been denied press access to Trump's campaign events. So letting the trolls in is extremely thrilling to them. What we're seeing, Marcy says, is that the war room in which Douglas Mackey, Microchip, and Don Jr. collaborated to hijack mainstream news narratives together in 2016, integrated more closely with the campaign. It's not surprising Trump did that. Even in 2016, Baked Alaska, remember him, described a Trump HQ Slack room that was coordinating efforts. And here a screenshot establishing that from back in April of 2016. Remember, Marcy tells us, Andrew Auernheimer, better known as Weave, and then still posting under his handle Rabite, R-A-B-I-T-E, was an early key player in professionalizing that trolling effort in 2016, even as he was serving as webmaster for the Daily Stormer, which is, of course, the neo-Nazi website. Given that pure Nazi lineage, the Nazi illusions are surely not happenstance, throwing in a little Reich stuff there. In a post called Elon Musk's Machine for Fascism, that's one of Marcy's earlier posts, she says she described how since 2016, trolls and their overlords have been working to perfect the conditions that allowed such trolls to have significant influence in the 2016 election, and an even bigger influence in Trump's attempted coup. Baked Alaska was, in fact, in the Capitol and in Nancy Pelosi's office, and has been in court about that. one of the only things that stopped the trolls and Trump from sustaining his coup attempt after January 6th was Twitter suspending Trump's account. This time around, neither Elon Musk nor Trump's own social media platform will do that, nor will Telegram, where the organizing function for all this trolling has moved offshore, away from the easy reach of U.S. legal process, nor will any of them shut anything down, right? All of which is to say, the Reich meme is not some random mistake. Rather, it is the manifestation of a trolling effort with roots in overt neo-Nazism that goes back to 2015. Which brings us back to what Caputo did in a story identifying Natalie Harp as the person who posted the Reich meme to Trump's account. Caputo is a Florida-based journalist with very extensive sourcing to the far right. He was recently on Roger Stone's show. His legal instincts, pretty clearly just parroting of what Trumpsters tell him to say, do, in fact, as she says, suck ass. But his political instincts are formidable. About 16 paragraphs into his story, after he presented Harp's role in printing out content from social media and right-wing sources to placate the boss, and after he described Harp's trajectory from Liberty University to being cured of cancer by a Trump initiative to working for the 2020 campaign to working for OANN to now driving his social media account. Caputo finally got around to identifying Harp as the culprit behind the Reich meme. An extensive quote here, of course, ending the one we read that ends with, it wasn't Scavino because Scavino isn't a junior staffer. In most outlets, this would be the scoop in paragraph 1 and 2 of their stories, rather than buried 16 paragraphs deep. But that's not the premise of Caputo's story. That's not what a political reporter with very good sourcing in the Florida far right focuses on. Caputo is more interested in Harp's role as a gatekeeper, which he puts in paragraphs 4 and 5. The one that was, if you want the president to see something, the best route is Natalie. Caputo is not wrong to find this an important point of emphasis, though some people contest it. She links to some Twitter commentary on that front. What does it have to say? Hugo Lowell from The Guardian saying, "I'm sorry, but I haven't heard anyone describe Natalie Harp as the gatekeeper to Trump. She's probably the best way to get a news clip in front of him and has influence through her proximity, but she's not ruling Mar-a-Lago." M-A-L, I guess, the shorthand that they're using on Twitter these days. Okay, well, that's of some interest. Dan Scavino has had a near monopoly on Trump's social media accounts since 2016. Anyone joining him in that role does play an absolutely central role in his means to power. And to the extent that Trump has moved off reading things on his own phone and is instead reading what Harp prints out, is Trump's eyesight getting worse, she asks parenthetically, or is he simply more paranoid? She does play an absolutely central gatekeeping role. Dick Cheney's memoir included a single solitary hint about the lessons he learned, not least as a very young White House chief of staff, that allowed him to become the most formidable D.C. bureaucrat for almost 50 years, to park someone outside the president's office. Effectively, Harp is the person parked outside Trump's digital office. Caputo's story, then, is that the woman who posted a meme that was interpreted, with good reason, as an intentional allusion to Nazism happens to be the person parked outside Trump's digital office. Harp's key role may be why Caputo described posting that Reich meme as nothing more than maybe not the best look, because she's not going to get fired for doing so. All the more so for another reason. Around paragraph 21, Caputo describes that Susie Wiles and Chris Lasivita don't directly oversee Harp and essentially leave her alone. You remember that part? Again, if true, and it appears to be single-sourced, it is a really important insight. Trump's digital gatekeeper doesn't work for the ostensible campaign managers. The campaign, which serially offers statements in response to reporting on Project 2025, claiming that unless something comes from the campaign, then it's not official policy. That campaign does not control Harp. Caputo's source claims that the campaign doesn't control what comes in and out of Trump's digital persona. Harp does. And people amenable to fascism know that and know how to exploit it. All right. That's an interesting angle on all of this as well. It is of some importance that the official campaign structure doesn't appear to have anything to do with the input and output from the immediate circle around Donald Trump. But I guess that's supposed to give them plausible deniability. But in the meantime, it also is worth noting that there are neo-Nazis who love to drop hints like this, some of them not even all that subtle, and they know that Natalie Harp will help them do it. Okay, good point. Well worth our time. And another good thing worth our time, bringing the lawnmowers out right outside KITM World Headquarters on a rainy day, too, which you'd think that they would delay. But they have not. All right, well, we got one more segment to go here. We can touch on a couple other subjects which you might already have been surprised that we haven't put up at the top of today's show. Well, we'll see if we can't squeeze them in at the bottom. Be right back.
Sup, fam? It's your boy Darwin, aka Darwin_Darko, aka the most reasonable man in America, aka KITM's senior black correspondent. You might remember me from such recordings as Spacemen vs. Space Cadets and We Need to Talk About Joe Biden. Today, I want to bring you good news about that thing you've been struggling with. Do you suffer from giving too much of a damn? Do you turn on the series of tubes and find yourself outraged at the particular way some news organization strung some sentences together only to realize, nope, this is not some fictional hellscape? Well, guess what? You no longer have to accept the life of giving too much of a damn. You can do something about it, because even you, yes you, can be a show contributor. Now I know what you're thinking. Hey, Mr. Most Reasonable Man in America, I'm not some professional podcast talking guy. Don't worry about it. Do you have a smartphone or some other electronic recording device? Well, that's all you need. You too can have a segment where you can read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Fair warning though, side effects may include general punditry, having opinions and hot takes, getting stuff off your chest, and hearing your own voice. If your recording lasts longer than 5 to 7 minutes, please consult kagrox@gmail.com. That's KAGROX@gmail.com.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Monitoring the lawnmower situation seems to have died down. It was very loud. It was a well-timed pass by the window here during the break. And I thought, well, another tool that we could use to filter that out, I guess if they return at some point, it would be a good opportunity to jump into some of the Rosalind McGregor reporting that we have standing by. And then I thought we might do that coming straight out of the break. But now I'm a little bit worried that if we play it, then the lawnmower will come back during it and then be right outside the window when we come back out of it. But we'll take our chances with it and work in at least one of two existing segments that we have waiting in the wings from Rosalind. But first, I thought I might make mention of a couple other things you probably saw earlier in the day. Bob Menendez's corruption trial continues, and I guess some interesting developments there reported on by Politico and much lamented on social media this morning. Politico reporting under the title, "A Constitutional Fight is Brewing in Menendez's Corruption Trial." You knew it would because, of course, it involves a member of Congress being put on trial by the executive branch before the judicial branch. And all three branches, of course, wary of the separation of powers and yet dragging one another before the ultimate tribunals. And here we go. Let's see. A constitutional fight is brewing. Which one is it? It's the speech or debate privilege, which could shield critical records in the prosecutor's case against the New Jersey senator. And that really raising hackles across social media here. Rye Rivard is the reporter here on this one. The federal judge, overseeing Senator Bob Menendez's corruption trial could soon blow a hole in the prosecutor's ability to prove their central claim, which sounds like a bad thing if you're trying to get a conviction here, that he took bribes to help send billions of dollars of American military aid to Egypt. Menendez's attorneys are arguing that some of the most damning evidence against him cannot be shown to jurors without violating lawmakers' constitutional speech or debate privileges. That's debate, not debate, as I pronounced it for some reason. Now prosecutors worry, I'm sure they do, a pending ruling from Judge Sidney Stein could create a class of super citizens in Congress who are above the law. Well, it may be a little bit late for that one. Stein is considering whether jurors can see text messages and phone records that prosecutors will say show Egyptian officials were, quote, frantic about not getting their money's worth. And Menendez's wife boasted about her husband's influence over arms sales. The constitutional fight has been brewing for months and will come up again and again during Menendez's trial, which started last week and is expected to last through June. Menendez is charged with accepting bribes, including cash and gold bars, never a good look, from a pair of New Jersey business people who hoped he would use his perch atop the Senate Foreign Relations Committee to help Egypt get American military aid and arms, which really never sounded like it was all that difficult a thing to arrange. I don't know why they had to spend so much money trying to do it. If you ask people, could you get American military aid sent to Egypt? Yes, of course, certainly, absolutely. All right. Well, anyway, I guess it was easy. So it's an easy job, like pressing print. What's the big deal? Prosecutors are already having to dance around some of Menendez's Senate actions because of the Constitution's speech or debate clause. It grants a form of immunity to lawmakers that is almost impenetrable in investigations relating to the official duties of lawmakers, their aides, or other congressional officials. And of course, setting policy for U.S. military aid to Egypt, well, that's, I don't know how you're going to argue that that's not part of the official duties of a member of Congress, deciding whether or not there will be such aid. The real question is, why did they decide there should be such aid? Because it's good foreign policy or because he got gold bars? Well, that part you can talk about. But it does make it difficult to paint a fuller picture if you're not allowed to talk about the part where they actually tried to do the thing they were asked to do, allegedly, thanks to the bribe. Stein has rejected Menendez's attempt to have the whole case thrown out. He ruled, citing precedent, that the Constitution doesn't protect promises that lawmakers make in exchange for bribes. That seems like a reasonable interpretation. So, while prosecutors can talk about alleged promises, they still can't talk about legislative acts themselves. So if you're trying to prove bribery, did you get the money? Yes, we can show you, the jury, that he has the gold bars. There's even pictures of him with the gold bars. Well, did he do the thing that he was allegedly bribed to do? That I can't tell you about. That will punch a hole in things, I think. That means the case is already convoluted. They could show evidence, if they have it, that Menendez promised to do something in exchange for bribes, but they cannot show evidence about whether he actually did the thing he promised. In this case, the fight is over whether Menendez took bribes to help Egypt obtain billions of dollars in military aid, which faced obstacles in the Senate, including holds placed on the funding by senators with power over aid and arms sales. They all have that power. Prosecutors are trying to show jurors texts they believe show Menendez did this, while defense attorneys are trying to exclude some of that same evidence, which they say is protected by the Constitution. I understand this may be more challenging for the government to prove its case, Menendez attorney Avi Weitzman told the judge during an argument without jurors present. We've said from the beginning that government cannot prove the case they promised. All right, here the next section is potential confusion for jurors. In Weitzman's view, the government can introduce evidence of a promise, but they cannot introduce activity that the senator takes in putting a hold or lifting a hold or someone else asking about a hold that he put on or didn't put on in an effort to prove a corrupt agreement that we believe never existed. Paul Monteleone, one of the prosecutors trying Menendez, agreed in part about the legal standard in the Constitution, but, Monteleone told Stein, it is also not designed to make members of Congress supercitizens, immune from all criminal responsibility. Attorneys are already being forced to resort to hypotheticals in court that could confuse jurors, if they haven't already. This week, for instance, a former State Department official called as a witness gave lengthy testimony about Egyptian arms sales, but only barely mentioned Menendez because of the speech or debate restrictions. Jury confusion could increase as future witnesses will be unable to talk about what Menendez did or didn't do while taking legislative action. In the coming weeks, prosecutors plan to refer to language from a news article about a hold that Senator Patrick Leahy put on arms sales to Egypt that Menendez uses in an email to his now wife, Nadine. But even though Leahy is a former senator, his actions are also protected by the speech or debate clause, from when he was in Congress, of course. So, in front of the jury, attorneys plan to refer to Leahy as not Menendez, or a pseudonym. Interesting. That's a weird development. But okay, Stan Brand, former counsel to the House of Representatives who has argued a bunch of speech or debate clause cases, said the notion that the constitutional clause walls lawmakers off from accountability is wrong, but prosecutors being allowed to introduce privileged evidence creates grounds for Menendez to appeal. They are tying themselves in knots, and if the judge sustains it, it's going to put a big hole in their case. And if he doesn't, Menendez is going to have a great appeal, Brand says. Prosecutors face a gauntlet of constitutional issues to convict Menendez and make it stick. Remember, they've been down this road before and not been able to, ultimately. The speech or debate issues are separate from the challenge presented by what counts as an official act, following a Supreme Court ruling that overturned former Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell's conviction. The High Court found that setting up a meeting, calling another public official, or hosting an event does not, standing alone, qualify as an official act. That is narrow. So, on the one hand, legislative acts that are clearly official acts cannot be talked about directly. And on the other, actions that are not legislative acts, like a Menendez call trying to brush back a USDA inquiry into a friend's Egyptian meat monopoly, I didn't even realize that was at stake, may not be deemed significant or substantial enough to qualify as official acts. So what is he on trial for? Next up, key text messages for prosecutors. There are at least 2 slices of Egypt-related evidence, not even meat, I guess, slices of Egyptian meat, Egyptian-related evidence that the defense wants Stein to keep from the jury on speech or debate clause grounds. Prosecutors have called the evidence critical to parts of their case. First, prosecutors say they have a September 9th, 2019 text message from an Egyptian official to one of the business people accused of bribing Menendez that shows Egypt worried that Menendez put a hold on $1 billion in aid to the country. Menendez put that hold on. Hey, all right. According to the prosecutors, the business person, Wael, or Will Hanna, then tried to reach Nadine, who was dating Menendez at the time. Hanna then called Fred Dybes, another business person accused of bribing Menendez. Dybes, I'm hoping, well, I don't even care if I'm pronouncing the name correctly, I guess, if you're accused of bribery. But anyway, Dybes called the senator and then called Hanna. Within minutes, Hanna texted the Egyptian official saying Menendez said it wasn't true that he'd put a hold on the aid. Prosecutors also said they have great evidence that they know they can't use about what really happened. Okay. According to prosecutors, after Menendez got this inquiry, he went to talk to a staffer who placed the hold and later told her to lift it. Okay. So I didn't place the hold, but I did tell her to lift it. So maybe he did place the hold? Okay. The second piece of evidence is a January 2022 text message that Nadine sent Hanna with a link to an article that she received from the senator about pending foreign military sales totaling $2.5 billion. Bob had to sign off on this. She wrote, according to the prosecutors. Monteleone said the text implied Menendez wanted to let Egypt know to keep the bribes flowing, and he is going to keep giving you what you want on the military aid. Menendez and his co-defendants, Daibis and Hanna, have all pleaded not guilty. Attorneys for Menendez have portrayed his actions to aid Egypt as consistent with long-standing American interests. Since the 1978 Camp David Accords, which brokered a peace between Egypt and Israel, Egypt has been the number 2 recipient of American military aid, second only to Israel. Yeah, I mean, that's why I kind of thought, I don't think it would be very difficult to get military aid sent to Egypt. I don't know how much intervention was really necessary, unless he was using his position as a senator to, arbitrarily put a hold on aid to Egypt just so that he could solicit bribes to remove that hold. And if that's their case, well, they're going to have a difficult time proving it, I'm sure, given the speech and debate clause prohibitions. All right, just wanted to put that on the record. Now might be a good time then to roll one of the stories. I don't know whether the lawnmower is coming back or not, but we can hope that it doesn't. And in the meantime, though, you won't have to listen to any of the distant whine of the lawnmower as we roll one of 2 Rosalind McGregor's stories currently waiting in the wings. Let's try this one first, shall we?
Good morning, David. Today I have more local details on something that Greg Dworkin mentioned recently about a recall election in Michigan. This happened in Delta County, Michigan, home to the city of Escanaba, located right at the Wisconsin border in the UP. This area is known for copper mines, beautiful views of Lake Michigan, and rugged countryside. This area was represented in the U.S. House for many years by Democrat Bart Stupak. This article comes to us from John King, writing at the Michigan Advance. Voters in an Upper Peninsula community have successfully recalled 3 county commissioners, setting the stage for a change in direction. While most of the media attention has been focused on the recent recall of Ottawa County Commissioner Lucy Ebel, a member of the right-wing Ottawa Impact Organization, that same night voters in Delta County also went to the polls and recalled 3 of 5 county commissioners for their votes in February 2023 to fire County Administrator Emily DeSalvo. DeSalvo, who had served as the county's administrator since 2019, was fired immediately after she openly criticized the board for unethical and disrespectful behavior. Quote, I am concerned this board is more concerned about their political capital or personal gain than serving the county. The board's recent elimination of the Ethics Committee supports this concern, said DeSalvo at the board's February 7, 2023 meeting. I will not be silent if I witness unethical behavior, so stop behaving in a manner which disrespects the office you hold in the community that you serve, unquote. The main issue that prompted DeSalvo to speak out involved the Delta Conservation District and its contract to oversee the county's parks, which she said was not being handled in a transparent manner. The board then voted 3-2 to terminate DeSalvo's employment, with the 3 votes to do so coming from Republican Commissioners Robert Barron, David Moyle, and Robert Peterson, each of whom was recalled by voters. Their respective challengers were Myra Cosdell, an independent, Kelly Van Ginhoven, a Democrat, and Matt Jensen, also an independent. They each won by an approximately 3-1 margin with just under 24% turnout rate, which Barron blamed for his loss. Quote, there was very poor voter turnout. The general public doesn't realize the woke agenda that the newly elected have, which will be put into play very quickly, Barron said in a statement to WLUC. I'll be running in the August primary, and we'll see if the people of Delta County want that mob rule type of governments, or do they want the constitutional representative republic, which is the rule of God's law, unquote. Jensen, however, told RRN News that voters clearly wanted a new direction from the board. Quote, "At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what your political party or ideology is," he said. "At this level, you need to be able to work with those in the community for the better good of our community." They, voters, really didn't like the direction it was headed or how it was being perceived or how they were conducting business. You didn't seem to have civility within the board. There was no decorum. We need more civility and agreeing to disagree on issues. I think the numbers definitely reflect that the people did not agree, unquote. Jensen added that he plans to seek a millage for the November ballot that would expand veterans services in Delta County. However, the 3 new commissioners will only serve through the remainder of the year and would need to win a full term in November. All 6, both the recalled commissioners and their replacements, have filed to run in the August primary. So Delta County voters gave themselves a little reprieve until August 6th. Back to you, David.
All right. Thanks, Rosalind. And it's good additional information about the situation there. There's a lot going on in Michigan in different corners of the state. Good news to see people like that recalled, even if only briefly, and a little bit frightening about stupid rhetoric on behalf of the commissioners that were recalled. Well, we don't want this mob rule, except unless it's our mob. And what about the constitutional republic and God's law? I don't know. What about it? Does that have anything to do with it? Are you sure you're talking about the same Constitution I am? All right. Well, anyway, I mentioned right up at the beginning of the show, too, that there was some action down in the Florida courtrooms where Trump is also facing, or at least awaiting a trial in the Mar-a-Lago documents case. Apparently a little bit of fireworks there. CNN reporting through Hannah Rabinowitz, Tierney Sneed, and Evan Perez under the headline, "Florida hearing in Trump classified documents case," remember that one, "devolves into shouting match." Well, they always do, apparently. Here's the story. During a marathon day of proceedings in the Mar-a-Lago classified documents case, a morning hearing in front of Judge Eileen Cannon, Sleepy Eileen, devolved into a shouting match amongst the attorneys, and the afternoon series of arguments prompted the judge to wonder if the legal nuances of the case may be too difficult for jurors to understand, if it ever gets to them, I guess. The heated arguments played out in a morning proceeding in Fort Pierce, Florida, that had been scheduled for Walt Nauta, one of former President Donald Trump's co-defendants, to present arguments that Special Counsel Jack Smith's team had selectively and vindictively brought charges against him. That's, of course, because he violated federal law. But, it's so selective. We only selected the people who violated the law for these charges. Okay. But the hearing quickly diverted into a long-standing disagreement over an August 2022 meeting between prosecutor Jay Bratt and Nauta's defense attorney Stanley Woodward. Okay. Woodward has claimed in court proceedings and filings that Bratt attempted to pressure him into convincing Nauta to cooperate against Trump by threatening to affect a potential judgeship nomination. That is to say, one for Woodward himself. Cannon did not issue a ruling from the bench on Nauta's motion that the case be dismissed on those grounds, nor did Cannon rule on a motion that she heard during an afternoon session on Wednesday, brought by all 3 of the case's defendants, who claimed that the indictment suffers technical flaws and that which required the dismissal of the charges. Cannon seemed skeptical of those arguments, thank God, at least for the moment anyway, while also expressing concern about a jury's ability to understand the legal nuances in the case at a future trial, if there ever is one. Real people have to decide these issues, Cannon said. And of course, Judge, you have to decide them first, so let's get on it. Well, the next section here, prosecutor says defense attorney was making garbage argument. I should probably just skip the headers and get on to the body of it here. Nauta claims that he was criminally charged in the case as retaliation for declining to cooperate with the Justice Department's investigation into the former president's retention of classified documents at his estate. I had been recommended for a judgeship. That's beyond dispute, Woodward said on Wednesday. There was a folder about defense counsel, that's him, on the table during that meeting. he said, claiming Bratt referenced that judgeship recommendation. In other words, he's claiming, Woodward is, that he was up for a judgeship, I guess, at Trump's appointment, and that Bratt essentially said it'd be a shame if something was, nice judicial nomination you got there. It'd be a shame if something was to happen to it because, of course, I work for the Department of Justice and the Department of Justice processes these things. It'd be a shame if all your paperwork was lost, for instance. And you got to check the paperwork with Trump. Anyway, I think the implication was that I was to travel and convince Mr. Nauta to cooperate with the investigation, and if I didn't do that, there would be consequences, Woodward said. Well, it's a thought. Prosecutor David Harbuck then rose and accused Woodward of engaging in procedural gamesmanship by making a garbage argument about the meeting. Mr. Woodward's story of what happened at that meeting is a fantasy, Harbuck shouted. So I guess he kind of lost his temper about that, banging his hand on the lectern in front of him. It did not happen. The heated proceedings on Wednesday came as the Manhattan hush money case against Trump nears its conclusion. You know all about that. And a new phase of the pretrial activity gets underway in the federal classified documents prosecution in Florida. The hearing was the first before Cannon since she indefinitely delayed the start of the trial, which had been scheduled to begin as early as this week. It has been more than a month since the judge last held a public in-person hearing in the case, though she has held at least one sealed proceeding since then. Trump is charged with, taking classified national defense documents from the White House after he left office and resisting the government's attempts to retrieve the materials. Trump, Nauta, and Mar-a-Lago property manager Carlos de Oliveira have all pleaded not guilty. During Wednesday's hearing, Harbuck slammed Woodward, saying he chose not to report the alleged incident until months later and has repeatedly changed his recollection of that conversation. This is a lawyer whose allegations amount basically to him being extorted, Harbuck said of Woodward, waving his arms. Woodward sat behind the prosecutor with his hands clasped and his head down, trying to keep a low profile. This is a rare thing for a Trump attorney. It's because Trump isn't in the courtroom and you don't have to worry about impressing him. The judge quickly scolded Harbuck, telling the attorney to calm down. Cannon questioned why there was no evidence gathered of what happened in the 2022 conversation, saying, "Why do those comments about Woodward have to be made?" I'm not really sure what she's asking here. And I guess this is why he's so excited about things. That's not true, and I didn't say that, Harbuck shouted back. The prosecutor said that there was no recording of the conversation between Bratt and Woodward, but that Smith's team had preserved any record they have of the meeting. Woodward shot back up at the lectern, saying that I'm here, and offering to testify under oath to what he remembered of the meeting. Nauta's request to dismiss the case was the first of two issues before Cannon on Wednesday. An afternoon hearing will center on co-defendants' argument that the indictment suffers technical flaws requiring its dismissal. Trump had obtained permission from the judge to skip Wednesday's proceedings, so he wasn't required to be there. When postponing that trial, Cannon pointed to the mountain of unresolved pretrial issues for not putting a new date on the calendar. Wednesday kicks off a stretch of hearings scheduled through late July that will get the case through some, but not all, of those pretrial issues. During the afternoon portion of Wednesday's arguments, the defense lawyers raised concerns about how prosecutors structured the indictment, claiming that the wording for different charges within the same indictment sometimes sounded the same. Is that a problem? Prosecutor Jay Bratt said the charges reference different parts of the obstruction statute used to charge Trump and two of his employees. Bratt also pointed out that jurors would be given clear instructions about the charges during a trial. Cannon said that while it's going to be hard for someone to detect what's different in these counts, she noted that will be a project down the road. Cannon has not yet set a trial date in the case after indefinitely postponing it in an order earlier this month. The Florida judge spent hours Wednesday entertaining theories from defense attorneys about what they say were problems in the investigation and prosecution of the former president, Nauta, and a third co-defendant, Carlos de Oliveira. Did anybody edit this article at any point? I don't know. It doesn't look like it. The defense theories range from allegations that prosecutors tried to extort Nauda's attorney, which we just explained, to claims prosecutors used inappropriate and attention-grabbing descriptions of Mar-a-Lago in the indictment. Cannon ultimately suggested that the potpourri of criticisms from the three defense teams may best be suited for a jury to decide at an eventual trial. Several legal issues have gone unresolved, including at least 5 motions to dismiss the criminal case. Cannon had repeatedly suggested that various legal issues could be punted down the road and handled closer to trial. Cannon's slow pace in the case has attracted criticisms from outside legal experts who have accused the Trump-appointed judge of playing into delay tactics by the GOP's presumptive White House nominee. Unless Cannon picks up her momentum considerably, it appears unlikely the charges will go before a jury before the 2024 election. If Trump wins the White House, he's expected that he will make the charges against him go away. There's another section here we'll try and read a little bit through before we exit for the day. Until recent days, several major motions from Trump attacking the prosecution were not even publicly docketed. The proceedings have become mired in disputes over what should be redacted in public filings. On Tuesday, hundreds of pages of previously sealed court filings were posted publicly as part of efforts by the former president to have charges against him thrown out. Those filings included a previously sealed March 2023 ruling by a federal judge in Washington, D.C., finding there was sufficient evidence that Trump committed crimes, allowing investigators to obtain information from his former lawyer that would normally be protected by attorney-client privilege. I'm not certain why they were actually excited to see these things posted publicly. Trump is seeking to throw out that evidence, as well as evidence obtained by the FBI's search of Mar-a-Lago in August of 2022, from which the investigators obtained many of the documents unsealing several of the charges against Trump. I'm not certain on what grounds he's thinking of throwing those things out, but I know he was trying to play up the idea of the boilerplate language about the use of deadly force if necessary to protect the officers or the investigators making the search. But it just doesn't seem like there's much to it. Let's see. In her order on Sunday allowing for filings to be made public, Cannon took a shot at prosecutors. One of several swipes she's made at Smith's office. She expressed concern the special counsel's office had sought redactions of information in the newly unsealed filings after previously giving its okay for that information to be published in full in earlier court filings. Okay, they changed their minds about it, and that may or may not be grounds for taking a swipe at them. We'll see. Just looks like more delay from Cannon, not based on much of anything in particular. We'll try and sort this out tomorrow, along with other stories we missed out on today.
You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
Next up, of course, is the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Justice Putnam. Let's see what he's got on the plate for today. Hey, Marjorie Taylor Greene makes an appearance, purposely conducting a dangerous disinformation campaign. And then elsewhere, the bank accounts of tens of thousands of U.S. businesses and consumers have been frozen in the aftermath of an abrupt shutdown and bankruptcy of financial technology company Synapse. I'm sorry we had to extend it so far beyond the music, but we had to get through that sentence. Now you can hear more about it with Justice.